Android Studio version 3.6 is now available for download on the stable channel. This new version of Android Studio continues to bring bug fixes, build speed improvements, and adds new features. A split code design editor view, ViewBinding, apply changes improvements, NDK update, an upgrade to the Emulator location component, and enhancement to the Android Studio UI. Android Gradle plugin version 3.6 includes support for the Maven Publish Gradle plugin, which allows you to publish build artifacts to an Apache Maven repository. The Android Gradle plugin creates a component for each build variant artifact in your app or library module that you can use to customize the publication to a Maven repository. When using Android Gradle plugin version 3.6 or higher to build a debug version of your app, the plugin uses a new packaging tool called ZipFlinger to build your APK. This new tool should provide build speed improvements. However, if you experience issues, please report a bug. You can also revert to using the old packaging tool by including the following code in your Gradle property file. You can update Android Studio independently from the Android Gradle plugin, but we highly recommend you to update them both. Android Studio now allows you to resume SDK components and tools download using the SDK manager that were interrupted, for example due to a network issue, instead of restarting the whole download from the beginning. This enhancement is especially helpful for large download, such as the Android emulator or system images when internet connectivity is unreliable. In addition, if you have an SDK download task running in the background, you can now pause or resume the download using the controls in the status bar. When using Android Studio without an internet connection, you may want to enable Gradle's offline mode. To do so, first select View, Tool, Windows and Gradle from the menu bar. Then, near the top of the Gradle window, click on the Toggle Offline Mode button. Design editors such as the Layout Editor and Navigation Editor now provide a split view that you can enable to see both the design and code views of your UI at the same time by clicking on the split icon. We know that editing multiple resource files in parallel is a common scenario for developers. Every file has different needs, so you may want to edit one file on design mode, another in split mode, and yet another in code mode. The editor will now preserve the editor state of each file, so you can switch between files without worrying about losing the previous state, as well as the design state such as zoom level and selection. If you are looking for a type and null save solution to find ViewBinding in your code, but you don't want to go all into data binding, we now have a lighter and faster alternative. ViewBinding provides a compile time safety when referencing views in your code. You can now replace find ViewBinding with the auto-generated binding class reference. To start using ViewBinding, include the following code in each module's build Gradle file. Being conscious of memory usage is a priority for any developer. Due to a popular request from developers, the leak detection feature is now back in the memory profiler. When analyzing a heap dump in the memory profiler, you can now filter profiling data that Android Studio thinks might indicate memory leaks for activity and fragment instances in your application. It's able to flag activity and fragment instances that have been destroyed or don't have a valid fragment manager but are still being referenced. To use this feature, first capture a heap dump or import a heap dump file into Android Studio. Then, to display the fragments and activities that may be leaking memory, select the Activity Fragment Leaks checkbox in the heap dump pane of the memory profiler. When inspecting DEX files, the APK Analyzer now supports the obfuscating class and method bytecode. You will need to load the program mapping files of the APK that you're analyzing in the DEX file viewer. On Android Studio 3.5, we introduced apply changes, which lets you push code and resource changes to your running app without restarting it by redefining classes on the fly. With Android Studio 3.6, you can now add a class and then deploy that code with apply changes without having to restart your whole application. If you haven't given a try with apply changes yet, let me show you how to use it. First, you need to run your application on the emulator or device. Once you have modified code in the body of a method, but you haven't modified any resources, apply code changes is your best option as it doesn't restart your activity. If you have updated a resource, The Apply Changes and Restart Activity option will attempt to apply both your resources and code changes by restarting your activity, but without restarting your application. In some cases, Apply Changes will not be able to work, like when you're deleting a class, a method, or changing the method signature. If you hit one of these cases, Android Studio will prompt you to install and run your application again. However, if you don't want to be prompted every time this occurs, you can now configure Android Studio to automatically rerun your application when changes can't be applied. To do so, open the Android Studio settings, navigate to the deployment menu, and select the checkboxes to enable automatic run fallback for either of the Apply Changes option. When profiling or debugging an external APK, you no longer have to recreate the project when the APK is updated outside of the IDE. Android Studio detects changes in the APK and gives you the option to re-import it. NDK also got updates. It has a better support of Kotlin for several features previously supported in Java only. You can navigate from a GNI declaration to the corresponding implementation function in C or C++. It will automatically create a stub implementation function for a GNI declaration. Unused native implementation functions are highlighted as a warning in the source code. GNI declaration with missing implementations are also highlighted as an error. Signature will be checked for implicitly bound GNI implementation. And when you refactor a native implementation function, all corresponding GNI declarations are updated. Rename a GNI declaration to update the native implementation function. The GNI got other improvements. You can now get type hints for parameter, and return values are shown in GNI implementation functions. GNI mangled function names can now be folded. The Emulator brings a new feature called Google Maps UI. This is meant for app developers who develop apps that interface with device location. Google Maps UI makes it easier to specify location and also to construct routes from pairs of location by leveraging the Google Maps API. You can define single location in the Single Points tab by searching points of interest just as you would when using Google Maps on a phone or browser. When you search for a place or click on a location on the map, you can save it by selecting Save Point near the bottom of the map. All of your saved locations are listed on the right side of the Extended Controls window. Similar to the Single Points tab, the Routes tab provides a Google Map view that you can use to create a route between two or more locations. You can save routes, play their simulation inside the emulator, set its speed as well as repeating the playback. After December 2019, the Windows 32-byte version of Android Studio will no longer receive updates, and it will no longer receive support after December 2020. To be able to receive additional updates, upgrade your workstation to a 64-bit version of Windows. Enjoy Android Studio 3.6 and remember that we are listening to your feedback on our bug tracker. Check out early builds of Android Studio 4.0 on the Canary channel. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to get notified and share the video with your friends and colleagues. See you soon!